Today we're going to do my March release roundup. This is a series I do on my channel. I have a January and February version. I'll have linked down below, where I pick a handful of books. I go look at YouTube reviews, I look at Goodreads reviews, and I compile some thoughts focusing mainly on tropes and certain writing qualities, character work that might help you decide, is this a book I want? Because I know for me, synopses are not what draw me into picking up a book, so this is my attempt to make the new releases videos that I want to consume, and they help me decide which new releases I want to pick up. I will highlight that. All of the videos I've used will be linked down below, including timestamps, everything like that, a Goodreads bookshelf if you do want the synopses, if that's where you thrive. Go check that out. And I'm going to attempt in this video to shout out some of the especially smaller creators whose videos I'd use, because they put so much work into these really quality review videos that the algorithm does not promote. That is not what the algorithm does. So we're going to get into it. I'm going to go in order of release date, and I will let you know my thoughts about whether I'll pick them up or not based off what I've seen. And the first one's a big one. This is the Atlas 6. This is the Tor release. I think it's Tor. Pretty sure it's Tor. But it was originally self-published and then was picked up by a publisher, and this is the final version of it, and the opinions are vast. I have, in just my friend group, I have Books Like Woe and Judith, who did not get on with this, but then I have Bethany and Laura, who love it, and then Leanna was kind of middle of the road, so there's a whole spread of opinions on this. I also do have two, one's a review, I think, and one's a vlog down below from other content creators, kind of pros and cons of this work. And both of those, well, one was more like, this didn't work for me because of the hype, and the other one by the Book Leo was more like, I had a good time, but it's not perfect, and here's what did or did not deliver based off TikTok. But both of those reviews were based off the self-published release, although it looks like this new release, although maybe a little tighter and less involved in philosophy, is still going to probably have the same things that work or don't work for you, regardless of it having an editor, just based off the reviews I've seen. The general blurb for this is that it's a dark academia book with magic that is based off science and philosophy, and some people were saying it gave them Kingsmen or X-Men vibes, where you have these group of students competing against each other and kind of working in this kind of secret society sort of situation. And I do think when people really liked this book, they didn't care about the writing style. They thought the writing style was completely serviceable. They were completely just immersed right away, and they had a great time, and they really liked the characters and the premise of this. When people didn't like this, they didn't get on with the writing style. They didn't really care about the characters, and I know specifically Judith didn't feel like this does what she likes to be seen done with dark academia, which is, really criticizing academia and having these overachievers and the toxic kind of setting you're put into in really rigorous academic life. So this might not be that type of dark academia. This is the dark academia where you have like brooding, competitive students who are trying to get things done. And the people who loved this loved the characters. So I think that's a really hard thing to recommend to people, right? Like, I guess if you really want to hope you love these characters, this could be the perfect book for you. But how are you going to know that you love the characters? I mean, I definitely saw that some people really liked this just based off of how good the chemistry was between the cast. They were constantly shipping people for each other. It kind of basically, after I've seen all these reviews, reminded me of like a really quality CW TV show. I could be off base. I have not read the book, but that's what it gave me the vibes of like a really, like a good version of a CW show that's like just from the beginning, I'm invested and I know things are a little over the top, but I'm here for it. That's the vibes I got. I will say something I want to bring up is that the magic is not as hard magic system, I think, as a lot of the reviews might lead you to believe based off some reviews I saw. Like, yes, it's based in science and philosophy, but that does not mean it's a hard magic system, if that makes sense. That was definitely something that I saw while looking through these reviews. So hopefully this is helpful. I don't know if I'll pick this up. I have no clue. I have no idea. Something that Leanna said kind of made me both want to pick it up and not want to pick it up, in that it's what Ninth House was marketed to be. Like, I like Ninth House, but I also had no conceptions of what I wanted from it. But I know a lot of people didn't like Ninth House. And so I guess if you didn't like Ninth House but liked the idea of Ninth House, this might be the better option for you. This next one's a little weird, and I honestly have no clue when it was published, because I wanted to talk about it in February, but then I saw that it wasn't available on Amazon when I was putting stuff together, so I thought it got pushed to March, but I can't find a publication date that's consistent. But this is a really weird recommendation, but I'm actually kind of interested in it, and that's Day of Ascension by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and this is in the Warhammer 40k universe. And if you don't know what that is, it's kind of this tabletop big war game. It's a sci-fi universe for 40k, and I know a lot about it just from my board game life. I don't play it, but it has a very involved world, and I guess they bring in authors to write pieces in it. So this is just a standalone on a planet that's very industrial revolution, really, overworks its humans. You have two, I think, major cult things fighting against each other, and I have the review down below that I looked at. The world building looks so interesting, and it's short. It's like 200 pages. So if like my library had this, I'm really interested actually in this level of like space opera. And it doesn't look like you need to understand Warhammer or anything like that. It's just you have these different factions fighting against each other. There's a lot of themes on religion and industry and what does it mean to be human. It was really cool. Like, I don't think a lot of people who watch my channel will be interested in this, and I didn't think I would be because I'm not typically like an IP reader, but Adrian Tchaikovsky is a very good author, and this IP is very well loved and has a lot of lore to pick apart and things like that, and it looks like the parts he chose to play with are really interesting. So I will leave that review down below. It's by Barthel Lauren, and like, I thought it was really well done. It really, like I said, it made me interested. Another highly anticipated release, Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I have a bunch of reviews for this down below, but I really want to highlight Robin Reed's and Coffee with Caddy because both of those were actually really helpful in me understanding if I want to pick up this book or not. But so many of my friends have read it and loved it. I have a lot of friends who are V.E. Schwab fans, and they've all picked this up and had a good time. This seems like a very, very good fall read. Like, it's got very good spooky gothic haunted house vibes, is what I've gathered. And I think it's like middle grade 2 YA writing style. I know it's published for YA, but just know that like some people wouldn't have been surprised if it was kind of maybe middle grade. Like, it has that type of tone, I think, relatable to her middle grade series. Another thing I saw that I think is really important is that this worked better for people who loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue than the people who really loved, say, Vicious. Because I do think that although when you pick up a V.E. Schwab book, you're like, oh yes, this is her work. I do think she has a distinct voice. I think she has different types of writing styles within her own works. And so it seems like the Tunnel of Bone series and An Invisible Life of Addie LaRue fans enjoyed this a little bit to significantly more than the people who really like Vicious, Darker Shade of Magic, and things like that. That was the trend I saw, okay? Just a trend. I'm not trying to generalize all of the V.E. Schwab fans, but that might help you because I know personally I have had no interest in The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, so I'm not really interested in this one, but it does have some really good representation. So the main character is nonverbal, and she feels very othered in this orphanage and then goes back to where her mother was from. But there's this whole mystery around her mother. She has this journal from her mother. She doesn't know what's up with her mom. So that's where the intrigue is. And the one piece of advice her mom gave her was to not go back to this house, and she does. And I think that's where all of the spooky intrigue goes. She also has this gift where she can see ghouls or pieces of dead people, which is why I like spooky vibes for when you want a spooky book. Like, obviously you don't have to read that in October. Do that when it feels right for you. But it seems like it's a lot of vibes and atmosphere that's really well done. Some people had really mixed thoughts on the end, but consistently the people who were like, I don't know how I felt about the ending, but it kept sticking with me. And so, although maybe it wasn't as fulfilling as I wanted, it's a book that's lingering longer than I expected. So I think that's a good sign of a book as well. I saw that several times in the reviews. I know Laura specifically also felt that way. So if any of these are your buzzwords, I think you should try it out. It's generally working for people. I don't see like universal 5-star praise. I don't think this is like most people's favorite book by V.E. Schwab, but I think it's definitely one that like her fans really like in her canon. This next one's actually one that I have read, and that's All the Horses of Iceland. This is a novella. I actually have a copy that was sent to me by the publisher, and I have a couple reviews down below, Elliot Brooks and Sara Reed's. So a few of us have read it, and I think expectations are key. So this is marketed as historical fantasy, and I think that's true, but it's more very, very low fantasy. So it is, I think, 6th or 7th century Europe, Asia, and we are looking at this mythical kind of magical realism, folklore retelling of, well, not retelling, but imagination of how the horses of Iceland got to be there. Because they have, in the real world, in our world, they genetically are very similar to horses in Mongolia, which is, very far away from Iceland. So it's the story of this trader, this traveler, and how he ends up on the Silk Trade Road and how he acquires horses. And there is some mystical stuff involved, but it's mostly about the setting and about traveling. It's very folklore, I'm telling a story around a campfire. There's lots of religions, lots of different spirituality, lots of different magic related to these spirituality. I really liked it. And it was really short. I read it in a sitting, and I was happy with it. Now, if you wanted magical talking horses or something like that. That's not in this book. And the horses themselves are there, but it's not the main focus. The main focus is this traitor. So just know that it's more of a historical fiction that adds some like magical elements, like the travels feels whimsically magical. I don't know how to describe it. Just have the right expectations. I do think the people who rated this lowly wanted a different book than what this book's delivering, which is totally fair. This next one's really out of my wheelhouse, and this is a YA contemporary hard-hitting, and that is All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. But I put it on here because Sabaa Tahir is very popular in young adult fantasy space, and a lot of my friends have been reading this, and I don't think I will because I think the trigger warnings will be too much for me, just based off what I've seen. But it is universally loved by people who've picked it up so far. I mean, okay, not everyone. I did see some 3-star reviews, and the reasons those people didn't like it was character connection, which is fair. Again, I say that is the hardest thing to get consistent. That is the most subjective part of reading. But if you like the characters, people have loved this book. This is the book that has won the award of making the most people cry. People have been loving this book. Specifically, I think one of the best reviews I saw for this was by Amber Elise, and I'll have her review and a bunch of others down below. But I thought she had a really great way of presenting the plot and then talking about what things worked and didn't work for her and why she really loved it. It was great. But like I said, this is a YA contemporary. It has multiple perspectives and 2 timelines. One is following the mother and her past and how she came to be here in the United States, and the other is following her child and one of their friends. And there is a lot of loss and grief and addiction and things that they are struggling with, on top of probably the normal struggles of life and forming connections and friendships and maintaining them. Like, you have normal life drama, and then you have really, really hard stuff that these people are having to go through that are really realistic. And the main reasons I don't want to pick this up is because it definitely has a parent with an addiction problem. And I think that's just something I don't need to read because I've lived it and I don't need it. But I do think that's an important story to have out there to destigmatize it. And I do know that this story is not only hard-hitting, but it handles these ideas with compassion. It is meant to destigmatize these issues, and I think that's valuable, especially in the young adult space. If this didn't have my specific triggers with all of the praise it's been giving, I might have picked it up. So just know, a lot of people have been connecting to this. It's a very hard-hitting book, and I was this close to maybe picking it up, but then I remembered what happened when I read Shuggie Bane, and I do think this one, although maybe falls into a similar problem of, based off just one review I saw, of having so many tragic events happen, which can happen to a family. Like, that's not saying that's unrealistic, but that also happened in Shuggie Bane. I didn't like. It's like, you can just pick like 2 of them. Like, those are heavy enough, that sort of thing. Like, stop kicking people while they're down. And I think this book doesn't do that in the same way as Shuggie Bane, but that's the thing that makes me hesitant personally, just because, like I said, I just lived it. I don't need it. But I'm really glad this book exists. Next up is the Circus Infinite. There are no video reviews for this, but it looked cool, so I wanted to talk about it. And this is a sci-fi space opera circus book. You heard me right. There is a circus on the moon. It's very found family. This is a book that seems to tonally go from fun, found family, misfits get together to get at the big bad, but also really graphic violence and trauma. Our main character is asexual and an empath and also has these gravity powers and is dealing with people wanting them for their value. And so that's how they're the main character that gets into this misfit, falls into the circus. And then they also apparently fall in love and are like working on that with their asexuality. So there's really good LGBTQ representation in this story. And mainly a lot of just the criticism I saw were mainly, this is a really cool world. I really liked the characters. I had a fun time. Just had some debut author problems. And none of them seemed egregious. It was just like, maybe I didn't like as much exposition over here or stuff like that. But the setting seemed really interesting. Like, I've never heard of a circus in space. Like, I'm sure it exists. Like, every story has had some elements of it written somewhere, right? But I'm just saying, if any of that sounds interesting to you, check it out. Just know that a lot of people were not prepared for some of the graphic content that is in this book. So just if you have trigger warnings you need to look at, a lot of people have listed those in their Goodreads reviews, and I highly recommend checking them out. Next, we have a highly anticipated YA fantasy called Blood Scion, and I have a couple vlogs down below by Gray Reads and Curly Top Reads and Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany, and they have a wide range. I think actually Bethany has a different take from the other 2 vlogs, so if you want to see a whole spectrum, definitely recommend. But this is a very dark, violent, graphic YA fantasy about child soldiers based off Nigeria and Yoruba culture. And I saw a lot of people who were really into this story, got very emotional, and when they got to the ending, they wanted the next book now. So just know that it has that energy where you get to the ending and like, if this book connected with you, it just floors you. That said, I did see in Bethany's review that this didn't work as well for her, and part of that was the ending. So it's not going to be the same. It's not one size fit all. But I watched several reviews, and a lot of people were like, what was that ending? I need the next book now. A lot of these people do traditionally read more young adults, so maybe that's part of it. But it seemed like this is darker than the Gilded Ones, which handles similar themes of child soldiers and stuff like that. I do think I saw a lot of reviews that this main character, although compelling, is not very likable. I actually think in Bethany's written review on Goodreads, she talks about how this is kind of like the Poppy War, but young adult, in how graphic it is and how unlikable the main character is in achieving her goals. So those are kind of the vibes of this one. I don't know if I'll pick it up because I liked the Gilded Ones, but I thought that was pretty dark, like especially for young adult. But I'm a little concerned, especially with like all of the trigger warnings I've been seeing around, which again, go check out the Goodreads reviews if you want to see those. But yeah, if you wanted a story that, you know, looks into colonialism, colorism, and like child soldier stuff that is very based on what has happened in our world, this is, I think, a quality version of that. Just be ready for a brutal, fast-paced, violent time, I think. This next one is a Book of the Month book, so hopefully a bunch of people have read it. And this is The Cartographers. And the reviews I have, one is negative and one is positive. The negative one is Kimbry Reads, and the positive is actually an author, Brian Lee Durfee, if you know him from, I'm forgetting. I'll have the cover here real quick. But the author of this book, something with the moon. But both of these reviews exist down below for your perusal. And I think part of this is, again, an expectations game. So this is marketed as fantasy through Book of the Month, and this seems more like speculative literary fiction or magical realism mystery fiction, or it has other genres that are infinitely stronger than its fantasy components, is I think part of the issue. And I think it also depends if you resonate with the geeky, nerdy stuff that's happening in the book, because these characters are all very academic and love maps, is what I have gathered. And if you also love maps and the history behind maps, I don't think it's necessarily like as fast-paced as the Da Vinci Code or National Treasure, but I do think it has some of those vibes. And I do think consistently the thing that was the weakest for people, even who loved it, were the cast of characters and the character work. I think that most people thought they were serviceable and fine, and some they connected to more than others, but it was the plot and the intrigue that worked for people in this story, and the thematic content of the importance of maps and knowing where you are and the puzzle of it all. So this one I do think is just an expectations game. Don't expect it to be high fantasy or even low fantasy. It seems like it's just very light, speculative, magical realism. Another highly anticipated book, The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. I have not read anything by this author yet, but apparently he writes some fun sci-fi based off a lot of these reviews, which I have Thomas from SFF 180, Tammy from Tammy Tries to Read, and Rachel from Shades of Orange down below, and they all basically said approximately the same thing, that this was a fun time, maybe not something they'll remember forever, but like a good romp of a sci-fi. And I think that's important to have, and that's actually what John Scalzi was going for, so I think he accomplished his goal of a work. An important thing to note that this is a COVID book, in that COVID is in the book. The premise of it is the main character loses their job because of COVID, and that's how they get the job working in this other dimension with these kaiju creatures. So that's the initiating factor. So if you don't want that in your story, go ahead. But I do think it's a very lighthearted, fun story, especially if you like Jurassic Park and just big monsters and things like that. It looks like a really fun time, a really good popcorn read. I don't know. I don't know if I'll pick it up. It's definitely short, so it's not like it's too long to be the type of read it is. So if you really just want like 260 pages of escapism, it seems like it could be good if these are your buzzwords. Like if you just want a less stressful version of Jurassic Park, maybe. Although I guess I don't know how high stakes this book is. So many people just think of it as a fun romp, but sometimes people think stressful things are fun. So don't hold me to that. But if you want a fish out of water experience that might not be super unpredictable, try it out. This next one I was really interested in seeing reviews for, and I think I've landed on I want to try this from the library based off these reviews, and that's City of Dusk. This is a new Orbit release. I always look into Orbit releases because they tend to write things I care about, and they're really good at having diverse representation in their lines. And so this one is a multi-point of view world with gods that give people powers, and there's elemental magic and shadow magic and necromancy and light magic, so you got a lot of magic. A thing that was highlighted to me in Rogers Reads reviews is that this has magic. This isn't a fantasy book that we're just in another world. No, this is a fantasy book with magic, and magic plays an important role because the gods have left and the city is crumbling, so these 4 heirs, our 4 main point of views, have to work together to make it work out. A consistent negative, or not negative, a thing people would want to know before reading this book, is that this is definitely one of these bridge fantasy books based off the characters and how they are written and their age, where it's not young adult, it's definitely adult, but if we had a new adult publishing line, this would probably fit more in there, because these are younger protagonists, like I think they're late teens, and because of that, a lot of their motivations, a lot of their decision-making skills feel young. They feel like a decision you would make if you were 18 or 19, which I don't think is a negative, but I do think some people who are in their 30s or 40s don't want to see people making dumb decisions all the time when it's because they're just young. So I guess know that. Another thing is that it's apparently an extremely slow, confusing world-building start, and then it really ramps up by the end. So it's got this uneven pacing, probably similar to like Mistborn, The Final Empire. That's what it was reminding me of as people talked about it. And I'm curious about it. The magic seems cool. I think everyone was really like, this is cool magic. But I'm concerned a little because a lot of separate reviews are like, but I didn't know why this mattered. Like, the world building of the why was not as well explained on the page, and maybe that's because we're not meant to know yet in the first book in this series. So this is why it's a library pickup for me. I've been staring at it at my bookstore, kind of being like, should I get it? Should I try it? So I'm going to try and see if the writing style works for me from a library copy. But I'm really interested in, besides Rogers Reads, Elle from Elliot Brooks has a review down below, and then Sound and Fury had a really, I think, compelling review. And they all are really good at being like, this is what worked for me, and this is what didn't. Highly recommend Rogers Reads, because his was really funny. Like, his legitimately made me laugh. This next one is the one that I am most likely to purchase if I see it, and that's The Bone Orchard. And part of this is, like, Elle in Elliot's review was like, it's kind of convoluted and confusing, and whenever she says that, I pick that book up, and I really love it. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a good barometer for me, and also Bethany really liked it. And so did Judith. And Bethany and Judith and I tend to have a good Venn diagram of overlap in taste, but Bethany and I both are pretty okay with convoluted things. So that's like the first note. This is a genre blendy, unique, really confusing story, but I do believe standalone, or at least a very self-contained story. I've not seen anything about this being like a sequel. I don't know much about it because the minute I realized it's like the intrigue is figuring out the plot, I didn't want to know a lot about the plot. Okay, so this is more of a recommendation to the people out there who are like me and, you know, don't mind if they have to keep track of a lot of things, because it did seem like it's pretty confusing. You don't know what's happening, and I'm hoping it works for me more like Ruin of Kings and less like Gideon the Ninth, because that's the thing I'm not sure of, because the reviews are pretty spread on this. I also, Whimsy Dearest also had a review for this that had me interested, and I think it just has a lot of compelling things to say about personhood. It has a lot of my buzzwords, which are primarily confusing, genre blendy, what's happening. Like, I don't know. I know that's like so bare bones, but look at this cover. It looks so cool. So I have those reviews down below, though, if you want to know more, because I know Elliot's review, I didn't listen to it, but she has minutes more of specific stuff if you really want to know, like, the nitty-gritty of, like, some things that maybe did or didn't work for her. This next one's another, I think, YA fantasy. I will correct myself if it's not YA fantasy on the screen. I think it's the beginning of a duology, and the second book does come out later this year, and that is A Magic Steeped in Poison. And I have Elle and Whimsy Dearest's reviews down below. I think this is a competition fantasy book. So I know that's a trope that a lot of people crave, and it doesn't happen nearly as often, I think, as people want it to happen. I think in this kingdom, the tea is being poisoned, and that's an issue. So they're having a competition to figure it out, and our main character is doing this to help try to save her sister, but also to maybe get better standings, and in this process learns what it's like in upper society and how you can't really trust anyone. And that's, I think, a lot of the intrigue is like, you don't know which characters to trust with our main character, and like obviously we have this like overarching thing of someone's poisoning everyone. So this was not intriguing to me, not because it's not good, it's just not my buzzwords, but it looks like, at least for Elle at Elliot Brooks, she was hoping for this to be exactly what it was for her. So for sure, if like you read the synopsis of this book and were like, I really hope it scratches XYZ itch, I think it will. I think this book has been marketed appropriately based off the few reviews I've seen. And the last book we'll talk about are Wild and Wicked Things, and I have reviews from Elle, Bright and Bookish, and Audrey at Perpetual Pages. Bright and Bookish had a standalone review for this, and I actually really understood, I think, whether or not I'd pick it up from this, and if I did, it would be probably a library read in the fall based off the vibes. So this is a witchy. It's a witchy set in, I believe, 1920s-ish. Actually, no, it's, I think, after World War II. Because it's inspired by The Great Gatsby, which I believe is a 1920s book. But I think World War II was brought up a lot. But early to mid 20th century era, Great Gatsby inspired, not a retelling like The Chosen and the Beautiful, and we have very naive, innocent characters being thrown into a dark magic society and figuring out things and getting into trouble and trying to get out of trouble. I know it's mostly vibes. The atmosphere and vibes are the strongest part of this, so are the thematic discussions, and a lot of people were like, the characters are either fine, too bad, like people weren't raving about the characters. I do think they, based off what people said, maybe made sense. It's just the execution of it, or being in their heads in a repetitive nature, wasn't for everyone's cup of tea. But in general, if you don't mind a slow build book about atmosphere that has, thematic content about, being a woman who isn't following the rules of society by using magic when it's outlaw, by being in sapphic relationships, and then having these intense situations that they have to problem solve their way out of, this might really work for you. I do know Bethany DNF'd it, and I do think maybe it's a little long, or maybe the repetitive parts could go out, so I don't know. I have an arc of this, and I still don't know if I'll pick it up because I don't know, it doesn't have any of my buzzwords, but I can definitely see this working for a lot of people, especially if the aesthetic of the time period and like the kind of gothic atmospheric vibes are something you're craving. This is one you should probably put on your radar. So those are the releases in March. Let me know which ones in March you really liked, whether they were on this list or not. Like I said, I think for me, the winner of this, the one I'm most likely to pick up from the library or get at the bookstore, Bone Orchard followed by City of Dusk. Those are the ones that really interest me. And if you want to leave an emoji, leave a skeleton because of the Bone Orchard, because of the bones and things like that. Or I guess a bone emoji. I don't ever know what emojis there are. I just make things up. And if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.